Welcome class, we're going to discuss the ATD Level 3 paper, Principles of Accounting. And this is a paper that was done in April 2023. April 2023. Straight to number 2. Question 2 of the first paper. Your internal audit department is in the process of installing an audit software that will assist in continuously analyzing the huge data generated by the business operations within the organization. The head of internal audit has requested you to prepare a checklist of suitable access controls that the developers could ensure are installed in the organization audit software. So what you are required to do, part A, recommend 5 suitable access controls for the audit software. Recommend 5 suitable access controls for the audit software. So number 1, here you're just supposed to recommend. You can see 10 marks, so possibly give some some mild explanation on what you have recommended. So number 1, you have user authentication. User authentication, and these are one of the suitable access control tools that are supposed to be adhered to when you are developing an audit software. User authentication, and this is where you have to have a password to be able to access the system, and perhaps you might also need to take it to another level where you are sent a one-time password to your phone. It's normally called the OTP. It's sent to your phone just to verify that it's actually you. There has to be clear authentication to confirm that it is actually the person who is supposed to access the system, that is actually the one who is accessing the system. So in most cases, password will have, of course, the username, and the username will go with the password, and then we can also make use of the one-time password which is sent to your phone or to your email address for confirmation before you can be allowed access into the audit software. So these are just mechanisms that are going to be put in place to ensure that we don't have unauthorized parties joining the system, because in the process they might get a lot of other information which is not supposed to be made public or to go into other hands that are not authorized. So one of the recommendations we'll give is user authentication, and this will involve the use of usernames, passwords, and the one-time password which is sent to their phone or to their email addresses. Then we also have the physical security, and this is where we check just physically on where these systems can be accessed. What is very important here is that the infrastructure should be safe from attacks and unauthorized access, and we might make use of things like the CCTVs, especially if it's an office setup. We can make use of things like CCTVs just to make sure that in case anybody comes into that particular room where maybe the work is going on, then he can be monitored, and everything that he does can also be monitored. Otherwise, what you're talking about here is just safety from all insecurity cases. Safety from all insecurity cases, and we are talking about CCTVs. We are talking about just the physical, like if we are talking about the lock and key things, like we talk of doors. We have the environment where basically where the work is going to take place. It should be free from people who can come and interfere with the work and possibly have access to some key information that they are not supposed to be accessible to. So the third one, we can talk of an audit trail. An audit trail, this is basically records all activities that take place in the audit software. All activities that take place in the audit software. So anybody who comes in who basically is allowed into the software, his records of whatever it is that is going to do are kept by the software itself. So the login time, the logout time, whatever he did are basically captured in the software, so that in case of anything, we can always follow up and see who did and at what time, where, that is the audit trail we are talking about. So he can also just have a very good audit trail capturing all the logins and logouts plus the activities that could have taken place in that software at any given time. Even the attempted logins can also be captured. Then number 4, we have the data encryption. And this is where data is coded basically, so that somebody can access the data, yes, but he cannot interpret and make use of that data. So you can access the data, yes, but because the data has been coded, it has been put in a language that just anybody cannot understand. It means that you will not be in a position to interpret and use that data, unless if we have people who can now read and interpret that data, or if there are some keys that can now allow the data to be understood. So yes, you can put the data may be available, but in an encrypted condition. That is data that is coded, so that whoever comes across that data may not be in a position to use that data, unless 1 or 2 conditions are met before the data can now be understood, can be put in a form that can easily be understood by the user of that particular information. So data can also be encrypted. We can put that one as one of the suitable access controls that the developers can install in the audit software, just to prevent losing data to unauthorized parties. Then we have number 5, the role-based access control. Role-based access control, where only the people who have a particular responsibility are allowed to access the audit software. People who have a particular responsibility that is attached to them, or only people who are supposed to perform some certain tasks are allowed entry into the system, into the software, or to perform certain set of activities, not anybody. So you will only have access to the extent of the authority that has been conferred to you, and the authority, of course, will be restricted to the tasks and the activities that you are supposed to perform in the system, so that you can't have room to go and do any other thing outside your roles or your authority or your responsibilities. That can also be one of the measures that can be put in place to check on the access control. So you can work with any of these 5 and you'll be able to get your 10 marks, of course with some mild explanations. Then question B, highlight 6 contents of a current audit file. Highlight 6 contents of a current audit file. Now, normally we have the permanent file and we also have the audit file. Permanent file will hold stuff that are basically supposed to flow over the years, and then the current audit file will hold, in most cases, the working papers that are going to have use in that particular year, the year of audit that you are handling at that particular point in time. So when we talk about 6 contents of a current audit file, we are just talking about that year of income. What is very important, what is supposed to be, will lose actually meaning at the end of that year. So what will guide you to in that particular year's audit, after which it will lose meaning. But for a permanent audit file, that it holds information that will be used from year to year, information that goes and goes and goes until possibly the engagement comes to an end. It's a file that contains information that is of permanent nature and it's of continuous usage for that particular company. Current audit file, we are interested in information that will guide us for that particular year that we are carrying out the audit. At the end of that financial year, the information might as well be irrelevant because we have already gathered what we wanted to gather out of that particular file. So what are some of the contents of a current audit file? Number one, we have these what we call management letters, and letters of representation. So these are the correspondences that we do with the manager or the managers for that particular year. In case we get any issues that we think management should be made aware of, we will write to them, and then they will also come back to us with whatever it is that they are planning to do. That will be contained in the management letters and letters of representation. So you can see that will only have information for that particular year. The following year will also have different management letters and letters of representation. Then we also have the copies of communication with other auditors or experts, copies of communication with other, let me just say stakeholders with other stakeholders as pertains to that particular year's audit. Then we have the audit plan for that year, how we will approach the audit exercise, audit plan, and we'll also talk about risk assessments. This will also be captured for that particular year, audit plan, risk assessment, and the audit program for that particular year. So this will be contained there. Confirmation responses, like if we are talking about banks, we wanted to confirm the balances at the in the banks at the end of the year, then we'll have those confirmation responses. They will be put in the audit current audit file. Confirmation responses. Then we also have the ledgers, a record of results of let's just say ledgers for that particular year. Then the results of audit tests that have been conducted. Of course, we'll be conducting some tests here and there to check if there are any possibilities of misrepresentation, fraudulent information. So in the process of checking, those are what we call audit tests. We'll just carry out a sample, and the results that we get from those tests will also be contained in the current audit file. The test controls and substantive tests, all those will be, let me just say, substantive tests that will be carried out, and the test controls, all of them will fall under the audit test. Copies of financial statements, and I can also add plus the audit reports. Audit reports for that particular year will also be contained in the current audit file. Of course, we'll also have the trial balance, because this is normally what the auditors will input into the system and get the final books of the final audit report. So we have the trial balance will also come in as one of the contents of the current audit file. also talk of the trial balance, journal entries, actually adjusting. Let's just talk of adjusting journal entries, because we have quite a lot that goes on once the auditors receive a trial balance. So adjusting journal entries will also be contained in the current audit file. And we also have basically the worksheets, let's just call them the worksheets or the working papers that basically will help the auditor to arrive at a conclusion that will also be contained in the audit current file. Conclusion obtained on important audit issues. Various conclusions will also be contained in the current audit file. And an environmental analysis, just to understand the business, that will also be one of the contents of the current audit file. If we have any letters from the attorney, pertaining maybe properties of or if we have civil cases which might be contingent, again those ones are part of the documents which are supposed to be contained in the current audit file. And we might also talk about correspondences, or the minutes from board meetings. Sometimes we have the minutes that are very relevant to the audit. They need also to be captured, and they will be contained in the current audit file. Let me see if there's anything else that we are reading. There's quite a lot that should be contained in. I think we've talked about we've talked about the overall audit plan, audit program. Engagement letter, we have not talked about engagement letter. Yes, engagement letter should also be contained in the current audit file, especially if it's renewable every year. So it's supposed to be one of the working papers. We've talked about that. Findings and recommendations. Any findings, recommendations, conclusions from the audit test, we have also mentioned that. And then management responses, audit conclusion. Management responses, audit conclusion, how you have concluded the audit, financial statements and disclosures, and we've talked about findings, recommendations, conclusion, and recommendation of the audit exercise. The opinion should also be contained here. Opinion. All these are some of the things. I think we've gone far and mentioned more than 6. All those are points that you can use just to answer this question. Management responses, audit conclusion, financial statement disclosures, audit opinion, any findings, recommendation, conclusion, engagement letters, audit plans, audit programs, ledgers. I think that is far much more than what we wanted, and this will give you 6 marks. Then we have question 2C. State 4 criteria which disqualifies a person from acting as the external auditor of a company. So number 1 point that will disqualify you from acting as an external auditor of a company is independence. Once you lose your independence, an auditor is supposed to be autonomous. He's supposed to enjoy independence from any encumbrance or influence by the organization. So once you lose that independence, you cannot act objectively, then it means that you stand a chance of being disqualified from acting as an external auditor of the company. When you have relationships with the audit company or anybody in the company that you are auditing, then that could go a long way in compromising your objectivity to your job. So we say that you'll have lost independence, where you now come up with a decision that is biased, a decision that is influenced, or a decision that is not objective. The moment you can come up with such like a decision which is not objective or which has been compromised, we say that you've lost your independence, and as such you are not qualified to act as an external auditor of any company, of that particular company. So one of the things that can disqualify you is lack of independence. The other one is if we have issues with your professional competence, and here we're talking about skills, we're talking about qualifications, especially these two, skills and qualification, to perform your duties. In most cases, for a person who, actually the person who is supposed to be an external auditor of the company must be a CPAK, and must have also practiced under somebody before you are given the go-ahead to be a practicing auditor. So there are qualifications that you must meet before you become a practicing auditor. Before you meet those qualifications, you cannot purport to act as an external auditor of the company. So professional competence, if you lack the professional competence, then you'll be disqualified to act as an external auditor of a company. Then the other thing is conflict of interest. If you have also an interest in the company that you are auditing, chances are very high that you will be disqualified. And an interest means that you also have a hand. Maybe you are one of the partners, you are one of the employees, you are one of the directors, you are one of the, or even you are a competitor, you know. The moment there's something that draws a relationship between you and that organization, that might put again your judgment into question, then in such like cases you'll be disqualified from acting as an external auditor of that company. Then legal, we have legal and regulatory prohibitions, and mostly this will come in when you have like a court case that is ongoing, or some time back you were found to be guilty of criminal charges that will not go well with the profession, and in such like cases you might be disqualified from acting as an external auditor of the company. So the restrictions might come either from the courts, might also come from the regulatory bodies. In this case, we might be talking about ISPAC, CMA, and such like other regulatory bodies. So once they disqualify you from acting as an external auditor of companies that fall within the jurisdiction, it simply means that you cannot work for those companies. So that is also one of the possibilities of how an auditor might be disqualified from performing his or her duties as an external auditor. Then non-compliance with ethical and professional standards is also one of the reasons. Non-compliance with ethical and professional standards, and this is where an external auditor is found to engage in, say, fraudulent activities, or he also joins others in misrepresenting the company's state of affairs. In such like cases, he will have failed to maintain professional competence, and that will result into his disqualification. So all those are 5 points, but we also have others. Let me just see what we have that we can just add on this. I think we've said most of them. A person shall be disqualified if he's a partner, or is you are one of the directors or one of the partners, I think we've talked about that. If you are an officer or servant of the company, if you are a body corporate, body corporates are not allowed to act as external auditors of the companies. So that is also one of the key points that we need to note. Of course, a relative, I think most of these things we've already discussed. So let's go with these 5 points that may disqualify a person from acting as an external auditor of a company. So that marks the end of question 2. That marks the end of our question 2. Let's meet in question 3. Thank you.